I'm resident of Collinwood, Joel Sands for YouTube, joined by my buddy Patrick McCray, author of the Dark Shadows Daybook UnBound. We're here to talk some special effects of Dark Shadows. I gotta tell you, Patrick, yes, yes.
Well, it's a mock-up, but it's I got the proof back, and there are things that I need to tweak. They're just like spacing things and a few things like that.
Looks
And
great.
I am a tweak of that and figuring out a finer point of Amazon because I'm doing it through Ingram Spark, which will get into bookstores, which the first book wasn't. And this is what it will look like, though. This is about the right thickness. This is about the right length. And as a mock-up of the cover. And so we will be in business with that. If I get off my keister tomorrow and do the proofing like I should, we will be in business within a week, maybe 2 weeks tops, in terms of getting it into people's hands.
Is it okay if I put in the title Dark Shadows Daybook UnBound News?
That'd be great. I would be thrilled.
Cool. That looks good, dude. It looks good. I'm excited. That looks super awesome. I love how the fonts and like some of it's in red and stuff.
Yeah. And in fact, the font that I use for the author names and things like that is the John Carpenter font.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought you would like that.
I love, like, anything John Carpenter I love.
There are little shout outs throughout the book. There are even shout outs to there are definite stylistic and visual shout outs to this is beyond the version you saw, to Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. There's a lot of Wrath of Khan stuff in there stylistically, and going all the way back to the, I think, Franz Joseph Star Trek Technical Manual from the 70s. Yeah, there are little tips of the hat and all sorts of stuff in there. So I had a good time making it and putting it together.
I gotta tell you, when I was thinking about the special effects today, my mind instantly went to Evan Hanley's face after the hand.
That's one of the better effects on the show.
Yeah.
It really is.
I mean, the fact it looked terrifying because you're wondering what the hand can really do from a damage standpoint.
I can only imagine.
And when they show his face after he's like, it looks, the effect, first of all, the makeup effect looks really good, but it looks so scary. It's like, oh my God, you actually feel sorry for Humphrey Allen Alstrado's character.
You know who I feel sorry for?
Yeah.
I feel sorry for kids who had been talking about what a great show this was. And, overly concerned parents wringing their hands over, oh, boy, that Barnabas sounds awfully scary. Oh, those ghosts are too scary. And the kid's saying, you know what? It's not really scary. He's sort of become Uncle Barnabas now. And, he was looking after the kids when Roger went to Boston and all this other stuff. And really, it's hokey. It's kind of comic booky. And so the parents sit down and say, well, we'll be responsible for it. We'll watch this with you to share the experience. Okay, you say it's not that scary. Good. We'll see the sort of wholesome entertainment that you're watching. And then, because that there were a few kids who had their parents not knowing what the hell it was going to be, tune in, and it was that Evan Hanley warped face episode. The beatings some of those kids got for being little liars, because they can't go back and refer to previous episodes because they're gone. Right. And the denial of Christmas and God knows what else that those kids suffered at parents overreacting, thinking that this most terrifying and gory of effects is the norm that their little darlings are consuming. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I first of all, thank you, Mom, for letting me watch whatever the hell I wanted. The fact that Evan Hanley's got this disfigured face, and then 1897 has a lot of cool effects, but this one, It shows you what the hand does. And I wonder how, I'd love to know how long it took Humphrey Allen Australia to get the makeup done, but that's really cool, that the fact that they got that makeup on him and he sold it really, really well. You know,
Absolutely.
what's a makeup effect that you like from 1897?
From 1897, well, the Evan Hanley effect is really the strongest. I mean,
Yeah,
some of the effects are subtle, Petoffy,
yeah,
just his design and execution. Um, you can't really say the werewolf because that was just the same makeup that they had been using for Chris Jennings. So that was introduced earlier. Although the werewolf, it is a wonderful, it is the sort of werewolf I think of as a werewolf. I don't want to see a human turn into a great big wolf. I don't want the John Landis style werewolf. I want a Jack Pierce style werewolf. I want the Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman. Emphasis on the man or woman, as the case may be. But that's what I like. And so Dark Shadows really delivers in that department. I think it's just fantastic. I do have a central thesis that I'd like to talk about with the special effects. But before I go into that, you would not ask a question like that if you didn't have a favorite effect from 1897 you wanted to talk about. So what do you want to talk about?
I really love, and it might come across a little corny if you when you watch it. For those who've never seen 1897, but I love everything they do with the hand concerning the hand of Petofe. They make an effort to tell you how dangerous this thing is, and it just moves all by itself. I know it sounds cheesy, but what they do with it and what it gets around all by itself, which I love. It gives you that realism that this thing is alive and it has a mind of its own. And I love Dark Shadows for it. It doesn't make you feel like it's cheese. It doesn't feel cheesy when they do it. It makes it feel all the more terrifying that this thing has a mind of its own. And God bless them for doing that. I mean, it really, I appreciate it as a fan and as just an old school horror fan, really, as somebody who's watched the old black and white movies, really, because you could shoot that the episodes they have that are in color, where the hands just moving around, you could shoot that in black and white. It would still come across the same way. So
Absolutely.
I just really appreciate the hand, really, of Petofe. Before Petofe ever shows up, I really appreciate them moving the hand around and how it attacks people at random. It gives it that Michael Myers-esque feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
That's
Absolutely.
my thing.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely. Um, my thesis here is I'm gonna say something a little negative about the show, but it is something that no reasonable person, I think, could debate, and it's this: um, compared to what the West Coast could churn out when they had weeks or months of preparation. Let's just pull the schmata off. The special effects on Dark Shadows are not always really great. Compared to Irwin Allen and that kind of stuff that was coming out of TV in that era, where they did have more time and they did have more money. The special effects are usually kind of hokey. And this, I think, is one of Dark Shadow's greatest strengths. Yeah. And I mean that in this sense. And I talk about this in the Daybook, I think in both of them, when nothing is possible, everything is possible. So, if Dan Curtis's metric had really been, we got to do the special effect, we got to make it look great, we got to come up with a time travel effect that makes people really feel like they've seen time travel and so on and so forth, that show is going nowhere. That, because they couldn't do it. They would just say, well, Dan, it's not going to look very good. Oh, well, then I guess we can't do time travel. And that would have been the end of so much on the show. But because nothing was really possible, they didn't have the time to be self-conscious about it. They simply had to be good creative storytellers and put it all out there. And so its so-called hokiness gave it a limitless budget, because once you let go of the prejudice that this has to look like, a George Powell movie or something like that, once you let go of that, this is not Ray Harryhausen, it's not George Powell, it's not Hua Chang, it's not John Dykstra. Well, Dykstra wasn't working then, but Doug Trumbull or any of that. Hell yeah, let's do parallel time. Yes, let's do a time travel sequence. And a friend of mine, a guy named Tobin Fields, who's probably one of the 3 or 4 most brilliant people I've ever met. I really mean that. Tobin once was talking about the movies of Ed Wood. And Tobin had a way, or has a way, he's not dead. Tobin has a way of stating the truth with such a cutting sense of humor that he is fully admitting to there being certain problems while still getting to the essence of something. He says something kind of sarcastic that nevertheless is very true. And he said, the special effects in Plan 9 from Outer Space are not special effects. They are symbolic of special effects. They're in the place of, the pipe hands on the strings are in the place of fantastic effects. And, once the audience sort of gets into that vibe, once the audience gets into the Ray Harryhausen vibe of, the creatures kind of move in a slightly herky-jerky manner, and you can see fingerprints on the tiger's fur and all of that. Once they get there and they decide, I'm going to watch this anyway, they're carried away on a magic carpet of wonder. And so I would say Dark Shadows, pound for pound, in the special effects department, gave audiences more imagination-driven storytelling, more of a sense of wonder than 3 seasons of an Irwin Allen show.
I think, too, well, I have a question, but I'll get back to that question. I think, too, with Dark Shadows, the special effects they're there, but they're very reliant on the actors that are in the scene.
Heck yeah.
And great actors and great actresses, where Jonathan Frid's being bit by a bat, and we know it's a bat on a string, but he sells, and it works. And with Evan Hanley's mauled face, Humbert Allen Ostrato sells that his face is mauled before you ever see his actual face and what it looks like, and that's what makes it terrifying.
That weird little coming from inside it. This sounds like what a ghost face from Spirited Away, or whatever that creature is that has that weird little voice that makes it even scarier. Humbert really made a great choice with that, a very scary choice, and it's not an obvious choice, but it's a true choice.
When you see, we talked about the Phoenix Shark. When you see Laura Collins in the room with Joan Bennett, it's Joan Bennett who's selling that fear.
Yes,
and when you see, a fire effect, yes, there's fire, but there's people they're selling it. So Dark Shadows had really good effect, but they had great actors to sell those effects. Look at a great example for 1795 is when Barnabas makes the mirror, like when he makes the skull or mirror bleed, when he's showing Reverend Trask, he's taunting him. And it's really, really done by Jerry Lacey selling that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have great yes, you can have really, really great effects, but it means nothing if you don't have the actors who can sell it for you too. and they both really complemented one another. My question to you is, do you think Dark Shadows, because they were, to me, when I watch Dark Shadows, they're more going towards the old black and white special effects back from the 40s. Do you think that's a thing too, or?
I think, they certainly had the same sense of innovation, and I think they had the same sense of I think they probably had some of the same tools
Yeah.
that were being used. That didn't necessarily go out of fashion.
No.
So yeah, I think there is some of that. Sure.
What's a favorite effect of yours from 1795?
1795. Bill Baird. Bill Baird and the Bat.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I really love how they have Jeremiah look as a wraith. I mean, it looked
That's a great effect. Yeah.
Yeah, it really looked really well done. I mean, the makeup crew deserve a lot of credit, but so does the actor for playing Jeremiah. He just sells it. And I love Laura Parker and how terrified she is. Because now she's terrified of her own thing that she summoned back out of hell.
Oh, yeah. There is a definite Dr. Frankenstein meet your monster quality that's going on there. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Another one, too, I talked about with Jerry Lacey's scene, the thing in the mirror. It's just so well done. And the fact that they have a dead prostitute on Trevor Trask's bed. I know that's not really the fact.
These things happen.
Right. It's a lot of fun. And I love how Jonathan, Fred is summoning him to the old house, and you sort of see his hand motioning. I really love that scene too in 1795. There's a lot of cool little tidbits of special effects that are really well done throughout 1795. But I really love the fact too that I agree with you, the Bat is done really well for the vampire turn.
Bill Baird was a hell of a puppeteer. He was considered one of the best puppeteers in the business, and they were very lucky, I think, to have him.
When Dark Shadows ever comes back to TV, could you see maybe Jim Henson's shop getting involved?
Yeah, I would love for that to happen. I think, K&B over the evolution of Walking Dead has really proved that, for better or worse, computers are having an increasingly strong role in this kind of storytelling. And that's just a reality that I think, we might not like it, but we have to live with. And, but here's the thing. We cannot be too much of the grumpy old men on this. Reason being that every generation has, since, movies started, has looked at the next wave of special effects and saying, oh, no, this is going too far. This is taking us away from authentic storytelling, et cetera, et cetera. And we got to watch out for that. We can't do that. So I don't know if that answered your question at all, but that did occur to me.
To me, the best CGI I've ever seen, and it still holds up today when you watch the movie, is from Terminator 2. Just, to me, that still holds up today better than a lot of what you do see today, like the CGI today.
I'll tell you, teaching cinema studies to high school students is a very humbling thing, because things that, my contention is that anything that came into existence and was fresh in your lifetime is going to always seem credible. It's always going to seem real. Even when we go back and look at some special effects of the 80s, yeah, you and I are looking at it with the eyes of someone from 2023, sure. but we are also looking at it with the eyes of, someone from that time period. Kids, and we were this way at one time, have none of that. They're only judging things by what they're getting immediately now that's fresh. So, that's a thing we got to watch out for.
What's something that I don't want to go, well, sorry, for the time travel, for the parallel time, I really, what's your favorite special effect in 1970 parallel time?
1970 parallel time. Oh, I mean, it's I don't know, favorite special effect, but a special effect that I enjoy. I always enjoy John Yeager.
Yeah.
Even as goofy as the wig is, once you accept that, it's great.
I think it looks good for what it is. I mean, they're trying. That's the thing too. Dark Shadows, though they're sort of they're using Jekyll Hyde. They're not exact. They're not calling him Hyde. They're not calling him Jekyll. They're calling him John Yeager and Cyrus Longworth, and they're trying to make it look different than anything else that's ever been done. And I applaud them for that. My favorite one from 1970 parallel time is pure acting. You have Jonathan Frid, who's standing in Angelique's room, and he says, "Let me see into the eyes of Angelique," and he's staring at her portrait. And Lord Parker's like, "My eyes are burning, my eyes are burning," and she runs, and she's like, "Who's staring into my eyes?" And Barnabas just turns, and it's such a great job by both of them. It's a great effect, but it's just great acting too.
Well, if you write around and with the tools that are at your disposal, then you can make that look great. I mean, if you have a compelling time travel story, and the way you travel through time is by putting a quarter on your forehead and closing your eyes, and when you open them again, and so when you close your eyes, of course, the screen goes black, and when you open them again, you're back in the past. You know what? If you have a good, well-written story, that's a terrific special effect. That may be a better special effect because it's not requiring anything. It's getting the special effect out of the way of the story. So that's I think that moment that you're talking about works because of that.
Yeah, I think with John Yeager too, I love what Christopher Pennock does when he changes without the formula at times, like into John Yeager, and that makes it all the more terrifying. And
yeah, there's no cause and effect anymore.
Yeah, he's become John Yeager in every way, which makes sense. We hear Dr. Loomis say, we're all afraid of the darkness inside ourselves in Halloween 2. I always think about that when I see John Yeager, because I'm thinking, here's the darkness inside Cyrus Longworth.
Yeah.
It came out. I mean, in every way. I mean, it didn't. Yes, it took a formula, but the formula, he didn't have to keep taking it.
Well, and there's, when you specifically, the whole darkness lurks within us thing, I think the other really scary part of that, or intriguing part of it, certainly for me, is this idea of, oh, is the best part of me the dark part?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a heavy idea, because we think that the quote unquote better we get, the less aggressive, the less realpolitik we're going to be. Well, maybe that's not the case.
What did you think of all the we get some really cool fire effects with the Phoenix. What did you think of the fire effects in Dark Shadows?
They're fine. Yes, they are gas pipes with very specific, little spigots down there and so on. It's helped by the fact that fire is scary.
Yes.
I mean, fire is just scary. And I think, that result is, and the actors playing that fear so well that David Hennessy, he really sells that.
Julie Sains' favorite effect on Dark Shadows, the fire.
Really? Why is that?
I don't know. I've never asked her. She said, I said, what's your favorite effect on Dark Shadow? She goes, the fire. I was like, oh, really? She goes, yeah, I just love it. It's really good and it's scary. And
White woman.
oh my god! But with another one I love too that they use that is really well done. We talked about Guffrey's death. That's sort of effect and acting too. You have Laura Collins, who is in a sense burning his eyes, causing him not to see, and his car flips over and bursts into flames. Really great job, but great effect in the sense of him selling that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just really, really cool. There is an effect. There's two effects in the beginning that I really love too. When we first see a ghost appear in the drawing room, I really like how they do it. It's a silhouette of a person, and you don't know who it is. What did you think of that?
For me, very few things are as terrifying as the concept of a ghost. Yeah. I have a lot of theories about ghosts, and that I can get into another time. But the thing about a ghost that is really scary for me is when it is doing mundane things with no cause and effect. There is no way to really predict exactly how this thing is doing what it's doing, but it is. It's not obeying predictable physical laws, and that's a scary idea for me. And so, the way Dark Shadows approached ghosts was very effective.
Every ghost was different too. It wasn't like a person wearing a sheet. They were either clear or they were either clear white, or they actually were just, they looked like flesh and blood people, and they could be standing there talking to you like Sarah. And yes, that added that sort of element too. The ghost standing there when Victoria goes, who's there? Who's there? First of all, great job by Alexander Montiel selling that she's scared. And really great job by the lighting crew. I mean, perfect. A pitch perfect lighting. Because you have to have darkness for there to be a ghost if you're not going to show who the ghost is. And they knew that. And that was really, really smart. And I love the way it's done. You can just tell it's a silhouette of a person. And it's like, okay, who is that standing there? That is scary as shit. And it still gives me chills talking about it.
It should. Yeah.
And there's obviously the bigger one is Josette coming out of the portrait, her own portrait. Really, really well done. What did you think of that when you first saw it?
I think it's a very effective effect. It is, that was clearly a big gun. Dan had that plan from the beginning. And so he put a lot of work into it. And the fact that it is black and white, and that the ghosts are white against darkness, and the fact that, honestly, it's not high resolution, but it's kind of fuzzy, gives it, I hate to say realism for something that, I've never seen, but it really does give it a very otherworldly quality that I buy.
So. Shout Factory, if you ever hook up with the Curtis sisters and ever release a Coffin box set on Blu-ray, get Patrick McCray to do the interviews.
I would enjoy that.
That would be a lot of fun to watch. With the special effects, the fact that Josette, they built to Josette coming out of that portrait, and it's really, and it's not just worth the wait. It's so good the way they do it. The music, the score, the coming out of the portrait glowing, and then her walking down and then dancing around the property. It, like, holy shit. And it's utterly amazing. I showed that to somebody and he goes, holy shit, that looks like a real ghost.
Whatever that's supposed to be. Yeah, it does.
Right. Who had never seen Dark. I showed it to somebody who'd never seen Dark Shadows before, but was into the supernatural. He goes, that looks like what a real ghost should look like.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, thank God for Dark Shadows. But with the cool time travel special effects, we know parallel time, but the I Ching wands was a great special effect. How they did it. The
Yes.
time Barnabas, being able to his astro body being able to get up and walk through a door.
Well,
What did you think?
I think it's a triumph of symbolism.
Yeah.
That I don't know if this is exactly what quote unquote Barnabas saw,
Yeah.
but it tells you the whole story. And the horrific idea of a guy who spent 170 something years in this coffin, and that's the thing that he sees. Oh boy, that's cooking with gas.
Yeah, the fact that they say about change, Julian knows what change is coming. He's going to have to be a vampire again. And that's the terrifying part for Barnabas, to have to go back in time and become this vampire again. Something he loved. He did not, want to be a vampire. But now he knows what being a vampire feels like, and he knows all the tricks and the trades that come with it. Which is really cool for 1897. And the fact that I love how they do the little doorway and it opens and you see the chain coffin. It looks great job by the effect team, and great job by the camera operators, and how that you feel like you're Jonathan Fred Barnabas walking toward it, like going toward that door. Great camera work. Another thing too, with one of my favorite special effects ever, and I've talked about this with you, is the Leviathan arc, the breathing. Really
terrific.
Yeah, it feels like John Carpenter's Halloween when you hear Michael breathing. It gives you just goosebumps.
It does, and I think it's especially a triumph because honestly, it could have been very silly.
Yeah.
It could have sounded like an obscene phone call.
Yeah.
And it didn't.
No.
That they were able to, they just had a sense of taste in how they did that I think really, really, really sold that.
I'd love to think that John Carpenter secretly watched Dark Shadows. I don't know if he did, but it's a really cool effect because when you hear it, it just gives you goosebumps. It's really terrifying. And the fact that it happens to Maggie as well, who you feel sorry for because you're hearing this breathing and she hears it. Yeah. You very much feel like how she feels. You feel like, where is that coming from, and is it going to come out at me? And you don't know whether it is or isn't.
Yeah, I totally see.
And you don't know what it is that's doing it. That's another thing too. It's like when you get to like Jeb Hawks and you hear the breathing coming from in the room, it's still very creepy. It's like, oh my God, that is horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So I also I know it's more like a prop thing. It's not really a special effect, but I do like the Leviathan arc, or the Leviathan symbol statue thing, how they built that.
It's some great production design, and that's a thing to not discount, is the importance of production design in all of this.
Yeah, I really think they did a good job of building that thing. I love the way it looks. It looks menacing. It looks like something you don't want to stare at or see.
Yeah.
Which you don't. It's like you sort of feel for Barnabas having to be their lackey a bit. It's like, who wants to go see that thing? It's like, Barnabas, dude, like, if you can get out of this, do it.
Yeah.
I really like how they do Barnabas's vampire turn in the Leviathan arc. He opens, the box is opened up and the vampire comes out. What did you think of that, Patrick?
It has a fearful symmetry. Yeah. I mean, on one hand, it is a little silly. Yeah. It just is. But on the other hand, I don't know what these things are supposed to look like because they don't exist. So because of that, it has such a sense of poetic truth that it absolutely works for the moment, for what's going on there.
It really does too, and a cool effect that I do like that it's I guess it would be considered cheap if you wanted it to, but I do love how they shoot the pistols in Dark Shadows. It feels very cool. As somebody who likes watching action movies with a lot of gunplay, I enjoy it. Especially the pistols they're using. They're using old school flintlock pistols. And as somebody who appreciates past storytelling, I really just love it.
I think there's a lot to love.
Yeah.
I think you are right in that you've chosen wisely with that.
I do like the fact how they present the pistols. Like you've talked about how like the props and stuff. I love how they show the box and the pistols are there in them. It looks very cool. Very good job by the prop masters. Like having that there.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
What's your favorite effect from the Leviathan arc?
From the Leviathan arc. Oh, I mean, the fact that they were able to conjure up hell.
Yeah.
With the goofy spider and everything else. By God, they did it.
Yeah.
And that is deserving of our praise.
I love the fact of Mr. Best's waiting room. It's really cool. The little area. I see. This is where I think Tim Burton copied from Dark Shadows for Beetlejuice. Right here.
Yeah, I can see that. Sure.
Like, I seriously think he watched like where Mr. Best was involved, and he saw the waiting area, and he said, I can do something with that." Because we get a waiting area of the dead in Beetlejuice, and I really like how they have special effects for Mr. Best, and he has his own little rules and regulations. To me, I'm not trying to like accuse anybody of anything. It felt like when I watch future characters that are going to come after Mr. Best, like Beetlejuice or even Pinhead or Phantasm, the Tall Man, I sort of think a character like Mr. Best could have been an inspiration.
I would love that to be the case. Yeah,
I would too. I'm not saying it was, but that would be really cool if it was.
absolutely.
What did you think of? Trying to think of the other effect I'm thinking of. Oh, the werewolf makeup did look good when you first saw it.
It still looks good today.
Yeah.
It's my favorite werewolves. I think it was executed exquisitely, and he did a really good job.
I think Alex Stevens is just he's boss. He owns it. I mean, in every way, shape, and form. Jumping through the blue whale window,
We've talked about that. That's a great moment.
Every time I see him jump through the window and come on street, I think about the Ultimate Warrior in wrestling, how he would just run down the ring, destroy people, and leave. And that's what that was the werewolf in Dark Shadows.
I've known wedding caterers who had the same philosophy. Gastrointestinally, that's what they do.
Really?
There are some. No names, please, but yeah.
No names. But another cool special effect that you and I have talked about is how they pulled off the room for 1841 Parallel Time. Really, really good job. What did you think of that?
I love that effect because the practical part of me really wonders, my God, how much of a pain in the butt was it to recreate this set, to, mess it up and make it look good and take it back and forth and make it look empty. And it is logistically so nightmarish to think of having to do this set and take it down. But it also is a real tribute to Cy Tomashoff because he's been doing sets very quickly on the show for a long time. We just haven't, celebrated it as much.
I think it's really cool that you have Robert Cobert's music really pays off with the effects too. In a lot of scenes, but especially in 1841 Parallel Time, when you see the room and you hear the music and you hear the chandelier swaying, really, really good job. And the fact that you have Lewis Edmonds as your Brutus Collins, as your ghost, and you're able to pull that effect off too. And you've talked about chroma key. The dead bodies in the basement is really good.
It was a very ambitious effect. Anytime you have an actor on stage with themselves, you realize on a show that really did not like to stop,
Yeah.
that represents really a lot of planning on their part.
Speaking of dual, we get Don Briscoe, who plays dual roles where he's Chris Jennings and he's Tom Jennings at the same time. We see Tom Jennings looking through the window and Chris Jennings is in Nicholas's house. What did you think of that?
It was a tremendous effect. I think especially if you look at it from the point of view of audience members at the time, because they were not expecting it at all.
Yeah. There's a scene that's prior to that one. It's not in the same episode. It might be in the episode prior, where you can see somebody looking through the window of the hospital, and I'm pretty sure it's not Tom Jennings, it's Chris Jennings before he enters the hospital, which is really cool to me. But with this, I really love it because you're right. You weren't expecting an actor to be two people. It was something so different that Dark Shadows was able to do. Now they're going to do this again with Laura Parker in 1970 Parallel Time. And I want to touch upon that too here's Laura, who plays Alexis and Angelique. And I love how you've talked about chroma key where Angelique is laying in the coffin. Alexis is seeing her sister lay in the coffin.
Yes.
Really cool. Really cool effect.
Yeah. Yeah. And there are strange erotic implications with that also. Just the idea that, there's a point where she's undressing herself.
Yeah.
And that, no, I mean, it's not erotic technically, but there is certainly the suggestion of, especially given how weird the Angelique character is and, what a rapacious seeker of romantic partnership she reportedly was in Parallel Time, that there is just a little something weirdly taboo in that I really think is interesting.
Yeah, because here's Alexis is just a creation to get Angelique back, which is really, really well done. And I love how they end up bringing Angelique back. It's a different Angelique. Another cool effect, which is really is the Dream Curse. Really great effects in the Dream Curse.
Okay. I politely will offer a different perspective on that.
Okay.
That was a moment when I was a kid that finally the line had to be drawn. And for me, the good thing in it is the doors and the mist. Once you opened some of those doors, it really felt like a horror ride in the South, at a carnival in the South. And that's a good thing. Once you look at it that way, like the sort of cart that you'd be in at the county fair or whatever, it's okay. But just the post that the dog's head was on, things like that were you can tell they were all supposed to be hidden with fog. And because of the air conditioning system and everything else, the fog blew onto the other sets. It wasn't chilled enough to stay right there. So I like what's revealed conceptually. And I like learning about the characters and seeing the actors bounce off those things. Yeah. So there is definitely that.
Yeah, you're right, because when I was a kid, my mom took me to the fair, and there was this haunted attraction where you would go into this room and there were all these doors and you had to find the exit. Like,
Okay.
one door was the exit, but behind each other door was something scary. And there would be like there might be a person, there might be like this headless figure, there might be some spider webs or something. And so I get what you're saying about the doors.
There's a little bit of a mixed bag.
I really like the actors do a really good job of doing the dialogue and making you afraid of the dream. This feels very Nightmare on Elm Street-ish, before Nightmare on Elm Street a bit.
I can see that. Yeah.
It's there's no Freddy Krueger, but it's everybody's own worst fear. And then in a sense, Freddy Krueger fed off people's fear.
Yes, he did.
So I really appreciate it for what it is. And I love that. I agree with you. Each character bouncing off their fear is really well done.
Yeah.
Another thing too that we get to see is Professor Stokes enter the dream.
Well, that moment is dramatically. I mean, those fabulous Between the Shadows girls, talked about it many times, and for good reason. They're geniuses, and yes. I think they're great. I think they're both terrific, and they have such good taste. Because that moment, just digging Professor Stokes, you're my kind of viewer. But Stokes just hands Angelique her hat, and it is glorious.
It is. It's you've been waiting for somebody to hand Angelique, her stuff, and finally somebody does, and it's Stokes. It really it lets you know that the character was going to be important.
Definitely. And it's one of the first places where we saw humans having a fighting chance.
Yeah.
And humans having a fighting chance, not with supernatural Wuji. Because, when Madame Findlay enters, it doesn't go well. When Bethia Mapes enters, it doesn't go well. And so we have been trained by the show that certainly if you don't know about the supernatural, you're toast. But even if you do know about the supernatural, you just don't have the ammo that evil does, and you're toast. And what flaming neon middle finger to that idea Stokes' triumph in the Dream Curse is. And he's so proud of himself. And he should be.
Yeah, it's really, really well done. I'm trying to think if there's any effect we missed. I'm sure there is. But so far, just really good effects overall. You've talked about how Barnabas smashes the machines. He smashes the machine that tries to bring sucking the life out of Maggie. What did you think?
It's fine. Here's the deal. Did the story get told?
Yes.
Does the show keep moving with the actors acknowledging the results of the special effect? And if the story gets told, and if the actors continue to behave as if the story is being told, then the special effect was effective. Because you want it. There's a great Ayn Rand quote, which is a sentence I won't say very often, but there's a great Ayn Rand quote that I've never been able to track down that says, "You don't live for your philosophy. Your philosophy helps you live." And I like to plug in other words for philosophy in there. So, you don't have special effects so that you don't have a story so that you can unload a bunch of special effects. You have special effects so that you can tell an extraordinary story.
Absolutely.
And that's what Dark Shadows does.
Yeah, 1000%. It's a beautifully told story with cool special effects.
Yep.
I think that's all I got. Is there
That's
anything you want to add? Is there anything you want to add, my friend?
No. This was nice. It's a very specific little thing to talk about, but it's important to the show, and it is one of those places where, Jewel, the past couple of years since I wrote the Daybook, and I've been doing this show and doing other shows, I've been very privileged in that I have been able to interact with people who love the show and people who love the show for noble reasons. And prior to that, and I've talked about this before, my life involving Dark Shadows and the discussion of Dark Shadows was more often than not being put in a position of having to defend it over stuff I shouldn't have to defend it on. And that's, and the special effects are a big whipping boy, because people tune in with absolutely no context whatsoever. And they decide to look at it and say, oh, this is like an Ed Wood movie, and then think that they're very clever and walk away. And they're not. They're not. If they think they are smarter than Dark Shadows, they're not. If they think they are smarter than the special effects on Dark Shadows, they're not. And they certainly have no imagination. And so to be able to celebrate it here and now feels really good. And my hope is that maybe there are some Dark Shadows fans out there. My hope is that there's some Dark Shadows fans out there. But seriously, that there are some Dark Shadows fans out there who've been in the same position. And if you have been in that position before of having to defend the show's special effects, I just want to tell you personally, as whatever my powers are as author of the Dark Shadows Daybook, et cetera, those people that you're dealing with are a bunch of no good nicks, and you are smarter than them. Maybe if the patience, the sense of wonder and the sense of love that you have when you watch the show, they will they'll be where you are now.
Yeah, I think the show. What happened? What happened?
I don't know, Jewel.
Oh, okay. I could still hear you. That counts. It's a great show. The effects are really cool and fun. And I don't speak for anybody else, but as a Dark Shadows fan, I appreciate them for what they are. They bring me joy when I see them, and I think I'd like to think a lot of Dark Shadows fans feel the same way. Definitely.
Here's the formula. Here's how it breaks down. We love Dark Shadows because we love the characters.
Yes.
We're allowed to love the characters because of the stories that carry them. And we're allowed to love the stories that carry them because they include special effects that elevate it from the commonplace into the rare and make it something special. And so all of those things, starting with the special effects, even if the special effect is just, wow, that's a cool shot of Seaview Terrace, it's atmospheric as hell, all the way up, make that show go up. So that's my thought, and I am tired.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. First of all, thank you, my friend, for joining me. As always, it is a pleasure having you, sir. Link to the Dark Shadows Daybook UnBound is going to be in the description box. The cover looks amazing, Patrick.
The inside of the book looks good too. I just have to tweak a couple things.
Can't wait for the physical copy to come out, my friend. Can't wait.
Thank you.
So I can order another version of the Dark Shadows Daybook. All right. But the Kindle version is going to be in the description box. Go pick it up if you have it. And yeah, when the physical copy comes up, go pick that up too.
It'll have, in fact, the physical version, I don't know if you can see this, says Eagle Hill Edition. Good. So the physical version does have enough substantially new stuff in it that it is really its own animal. And I may eventually do a separate ebook just for that, so that and if I do that, I'm not going to double dip you too much. I will make sure for people who bought the current Kindle version, if I do a new Kindle version, because this has a who's who in it. It has all sorts of stuff that the current version doesn't have. It'll only be $1. It'll only be $1, and I'll keep that sale going for 2 or 3 weeks, so that if you got it for $1, you can get the new spiffy version also.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sir, you have a great night.
Take care, sir.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.